Hi everyone, how you doing? The meeting's going to begin in a few minutes, and for anyone joining, we just encourage you to take the short survey that you see displayed on your screen right now, or you can use either the QR code that you see or that link that's displayed there, and it will also be displayed at the end of the meeting. Thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. How you doing? My name is Nick Fasano. I'm the Assistant Director of Government and Community Relations at the MTA Long Island Railroad. So welcome to our third public information session. We've held two previously. So we will also be discussing, besides service into Grand Central Madison, the timetables that we released, which were done on June 2nd. So the goal of tonight's meeting is to encourage all of our customers and our passengers to learn more about the service to Grand Central, the schedules, the terminal, some of the new features there, and then engage in a dialogue with us about what they like, what they don't like, and provide feedback so that we can work on that going into next year, or at the end of this year. I'm sorry. So, and this session's recorded, and this is going to be our final information session, which this is really just for us to talk about what's going on. And then next week on Wednesday, we're going to have a public information session, which is 2 hours from 6 to 8. And that's where you all will have a chance to submit questions and comments and feedback, which you can do now via the Zoom Q&A function, but to really be heard in a more public setting. So during tonight's session, you're going to hear from a few experts who are seated around the table here with me, and they're going to present on the benefits of the new terminal, the service, the logic behind the schedules, and how customers can plan their trip and use the new terminal to take advantage of all these different travel opportunities that are going to come about in the New York City region. So after we go through all of that, we're going to have a Q&A. So it's about 30 minutes of a presentation, 30 minutes of Q&A, where we are going to answer questions that came to us in the chat. There have been a lot of frequently asked questions that we've been taking from our comment function on the website. And yeah, we'll just go around for about 30 minutes answering, a lot of the questions that we received from you, the public. And so I'm just going to go around and kind of introduce everyone. So on my left, on my second to my left, is we're going to open with remarks from Long Island Railroad's Chief Transportation Officer, Beth Sullivan. She's going to talk about all the service opportunities that we're going to have with the completion of this new terminal. And then to my right is Rob Troop, who will present afterwards, and he's the SVP and Program Executive for Grand Central Madison. He's going to talk to us about construction highlights. And following Rob will be Jen, who is also on my left. She's the terminal manager for Grand Central Madison, so she's going to talk to us about the customer experience, the amenities, accessibility, all the stuff that you can expect to see at the new terminal. And then after Jen, we're going to have George Fletcher, who's our General Manager of Service Planning Projects, and he will talk about some of the benefits of the service changes from the new schedules, all the expanded service that we're going to have in the peak period, so either AM or PM, and the off-peak in both directions. And then finally, we're going to have Will Fisher, who's an application developer with MTAT, who is going to present to us on the trip planner, show how it can be used to plan your trip from any destination on Long Island, see what works for you in the future. And yeah, after that, we'll hop into Q&A. So following that, it's just going to be John and myself. We're going to be taking questions, as I said, that was posed on the Zoom chat function, on the Q&A function there, also on our webpage, all the comments that we got from you guys. So I just also want to be clear that we're not going to be able to get to everyone's question. There are probably a lot of you out there. We have received a lot of questions. We've received a lot of comments. And on that note, we're at the very beginning of our public engagement. So if you feel like your question wasn't answered, don't get discouraged. It's, there's still a lot of opportunity to engage with us continuing next week. And I think I speak for all of us here, we're all grateful that you're here with us tonight, taking time on your Thursday to learn more about this exciting new service and terminal. And with that, I will introduce Beth Sullivan, the Chief Transportation Officer for the Long Island Railroad, who is going to talk to us about all the service. So Beth, take it away.
All right, thank you, Nick, and good evening, everyone. I'd like to touch on some monumental operational benefits that GCM brings to Long Island Railroad. The opening of Grand Central Madison is a historical event. We are not just opening a station, but a major terminal in the heart of Midtown Manhattan. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge two other major projects that were strategically planned in order to enhance the Grand Central Madison service: Ronkonkoma Branch Double Track and Mainline Third Track. The culmination of these projects provides immense benefits to the railroad and, more importantly, to our customers. Some of these benefits may not be obvious, but I can assure you they are significant. Let's start with the reconstruction of Harold Interlocking, which is the biggest interlocking in North America. This reconstruction includes realignment of tracks, new switches, new signals, and bypass tracks that allows Amtrak trains to traverse the interlocking without interfering with Long Island Railroad trains as they currently do. The net gain from this work is increased throughput and speeds. Yards have been expanded and tracks extended, such as Mid-Suffolk Yard, Massapequa Pocket Track, and Great Neck Pocket Extension, all of which provide greater capacity to store equipment for the increased service. Jamaica Station has a new platform which will be in full use for Grand Central Madison service and is absolutely vital to increasing the service throughput in Jamaica. Long Island Railroad could not expand service to the level we currently are, and certainly not to the level as planned once construction is completed at Harold and the East River tunnels. We have a quick video illustrating the current operation with connections and how the new service will improve this. Got it, Nick?
When we open Grand Central Madison, we'll be running 40% more trains than we are today. Most of those trains will go through Jamaica Station. To deliver this increase in service reliably, we've had to rethink how we move trains and people through the station. Currently, Jamaica operates with scheduled cross-platform connections. Trains wait for each other to arrive to make the connections. But that means when one train is late, the connecting train is also delayed, along with passengers who don't need to transfer. Meanwhile, other trains behind the connection must wait outside the station until a track is cleared. Those delays are felt throughout the system. Even when the connection is made, the trains can't all leave right away. Brooklyn-bound trains must wait for eastbound trains arriving on track 4 to pass first before they can move. Some Penn trains have to cross in front of each other. The new plan is designed to avoid this and keep trains and people moving. It replaces scheduled connections with transfer opportunities. Trains to and from Manhattan will let customers on and off, then depart promptly. For most people who aren't making a transfer, no time will be wasted. If you are transferring, not only are we running more trains, every train will stop, so the next train to your destination will be along in only a few minutes. To avoid congestion caused by Brooklyn trains having to cross in front of trains going the other way, most Brooklyn service will now operate as a shuttle between the separated tracks 11 and 12 at Jamaica and Atlantic Terminal. This also lets us boost Brooklyn service by 28%, with trains running roughly every 12 minutes at rush hour and 20 minutes at other times. All these changes add up to more efficient, reliable, and frequent service through Jamaica and across the entire system.
As you can see, we're currently relying on trains to arrive at Jamaica at the same exact time, as trains from other locations, some as far away as Montauk, which is not the most reliable system. Again, this is why we use the new platform in Jamaica is essential to increasing throughput and running a reliable on-time service. There are also tremendous enhancements to our service. operating train service to 2 major terminals in Midtown Manhattan, one on the west side and one on the east side, increasing overall train service, increasing reverse commuting opportunities, improving the frequency of our train service, offering customers more travel options, reducing commute times for many. The service will be more reliable, which means getting to your destination on time. Resiliency of service, whether for operational disruptions or maintenance construction work, such as the upcoming Amtrak ERT rehabilitation project. It's important to understand resiliency of service and why it is so imperative. To simplify, resiliency means we can continue to operate trains even during an event which impacts operations. An example, in the event of a service disruption at Penn Station, customers will now have the option to commute out of Grand Central Madison, which is also located in Midtown Manhattan, only a short distance away. As you can see with these projects, they are not only planned or designed based on current operations, but for future operations as well. There's a forward-looking mindset to plan for growth and the what-ifs. This enables the railroad to accommodate changing travel patterns and ridership increases, as well as continuing to provide service for our customers during events which would normally shut the railroad down. Our customers will not only see, but feel the positive impacts. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Beth. So now we're going to turn it over to Rob Troop, who's the SVP and project exec for Grand Central Madison, and he's going to give us a update on construction. So, Rob?
Great. Thank you, Nick. So with major construction wrapping up, we're very excited to be on the home stretch, and we're putting the finishing touches on the Grand Central Madison concourse, which you can see here. It's a new 700,000 square foot terminal, and that bears repeating, 700,000 square feet. And it runs alongside Madison Avenue from 43rd Street to 48th Street. Grand Central Madison has 4 new entrances from Madison Avenue, as well as new entrances from existing spaces in Grand Central Terminal and the passageways at 45th and 47th Streets. The new terminal will have 8 tracks and 4 platforms on 2 new levels below the existing level of Grand Central Terminal. Tracks are fully separated from Metro North Railroad, and this ensures that neither railroad causes delays to the other. As elements are completed, we are working on the commissioning of new systems, the safety and security certification, and training employees to become familiar with the territory so they can safely operate the trains, and also perform maintenance on the infrastructure. During this training, employees operate trains and walk in the tracks. They learn critical infrastructure, and this includes things like signals, switches, station configurations, and emergency egress. This training ensures the safe operation of trains, and it also provides a seamless integration of the new service into the existing operation come opening day. We are also conducting operational simulations, emergency drills, and evaluating our evacuation procedures for both the terminal and the tunnel environment, and this includes the coordination with FDNY and the MTA PD.
Great. Thank you very much, Rob. So next, we're going to turn over to Jen, who is the terminal manager for Grand Central Madison, to give us an update on the amenities, the accessibility, and all the good stuff at the terminal. So, Jen?
Thanks, Nick. And you know, earlier this week I was looking at some photos from 9 years ago when I was first down in the caverns, and I'm just amazed at how far we've come. Looking at these photos, it's just, it's awesome, the service. As New Yorkers, we know we have the best city in the world and the most expansive and complex transit system in the country. And as a representative of the Long Island Railroad Stations Department, we're so excited to welcome you to this monumental and historic initiative, Grand Central Madison. From a design approach on our concourse level and carried through our mezzanine, there are 4 identifiable cross-street alignments representing 45th to 48th Streets. Each wellway connecting the 2 floors are characterized by unique color schemes carried throughout the terrazzo floor and glass tiles, and are represented in this photo from different aspects from nature: grass, sky, twilight, and ocean. On the concourse, the street number for each node is beautifully depicted in the terrazzo inlay flooring. The entire terminal really is quite spectacular. As some of you know, this expansive terminal was constructed deep into bedrock. 17 escalators serve between the concourse to the mezzanine from 45th to 48th Street on a 2-minute vertical transportation ride. From the mezzanine to the upper and lower caverns, there are 16 escalators spanning 4 platforms, elevators from the concourse to Metro North's areas, and elevators from the concourse to the mezzanine. For our customers, ticket office personnel will be available to answer questions and support ticket sales at our ticket office, located adjacent to the public restroom and MTA police. Ambassadors will be available to assist customers with mobility needs through our Long Island Railroad Care program, as well as to provide information and wayfinding. We will work closely with our partners at Metro North Railroad to help our customers to get to where they need to go, from Manhattan to Montauk, Port Chester to Port Jefferson, Riverdale to Riverhead, throughout the 5 boroughs and places above and beyond. We look forward to moving people in a moving way. Our customer amenities include a ticketed waiting room featuring a seating area, charging capabilities, a dedicated customer service office, a family restroom, and a mother's lactation room. And to further the experience, customers will have the ability to retrieve their lost and found items turned into Grand Central Madison before they are sent to our central lost and found office at Penn Station. At opening, we will have a reduced number of ticket vending machines, but rest assured, more are slated for the future, providing additional opportunities for customers traversing throughout the concourse and mezzanine levels. While there's lots to do and lots to see in this neighborhood of Manhattan, our Grand Central Madison concourse will feature a photography exhibit, mosaic art, and digital displays, coupled with future retail opportunities that will add to our overall customer experience. We look forward to welcoming you soon as Grand Central Service opens a world to explore, connecting Long Islanders to Manhattan, Connecticut, and the beautiful Hudson region, while conversely opening a new avenue for folks to explore Long Island's beautiful beaches, vineyards, and diverse communities. And we can't wait to see you. Nick?
Great, thank you, Jen. That was awesome. Okay, so next up is George Fletcher, the General Manager of Service Planning Projects, and he's going to go over the new schedules with us. George?
Thanks so much, Nick. As ridership began its recovery, rebounding after the heights of the COVID reductions, we began to see some new patterns emerging. The peak periods have become somewhat flatter and a bit less concentrated, and there's been a move toward higher ridership in the very early parts of the peak and shoulder peak periods. Compared to the pre-COVID era, ridership has increased between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m., and again between 2:30 and 3:30 p.m. Additionally, midday, evening, and weekend ridership has been rising as well. So our new schedules will emphasize these changing patterns with more robust service opportunities during these periods than we've had in the past. Along with those unexpected changes to commuting patterns as workplaces began to evolve in response to COVID, significant research and surveying had also gone into the development of this service plan. Our ridership surveys and geocoding showed us that about 45% of our ridership had destinations on the east side of Manhattan, making Grand Central the preferred terminal for those customers. Then, in addition to these customer needs, we also needed to plan for major construction work on the existing infrastructure at Penn Station. Much of that work had been waiting for this moment so that it can occur with lessened impact. For instance, Amtrak has a major rehabilitation of the East River tunnels coming very soon. This project will take tunnels out of service one at a time for a thorough rebuilding. Coupled with that, right outside of the tunnels at Harold Interlocking in Queens, construction of the westbound bypass and the eastbound reroute will be taking place. These projects, which Beth had touched on, will work to reduce conflicts and improve capacity at the busiest interlocking in North America, and will ultimately make it easier for our sister railroad, Metro North, to provide service to and from Penn Station via its upcoming Penn Station Access Project. While these projects will ultimately improve service and reliability at Penn Station, in the near term, they do reduce capacity in and out of the station, limiting the amount of service we can operate there and making our new Grand Central Madison station even more important to our customers. When writing these new schedules, we had to balance what was shown on the surveys with the realities of all of this planned infrastructure work, along with the constraints of the remaining available infrastructure and our train fleet size and employment levels. In all, it required some out-of-the-box thinking and a complete rewrite of our timetable for efficiency, reliability, and convenient service intervals at each one of our many stations. Getting into just a few specifics here, service in and out of Brooklyn has been increased by an overall 28%. We're running more trains, more often, and on more regularly spaced intervals and making all stops. Most of these Brooklyn trains, as has been discussed, will start and end at Jamaica using new tracks 11 and 12 and avoiding the clumsy left turns in front of oncoming traffic that occurred when using the previous infrastructure through the middle of Jamaica Station. This allows us to move more trains and more riders to and from Manhattan more reliably. East of Jamaica, the major branches will run a zone service during the rush hours. This means that one train would serve the outer segment of stations along the branch, and the next train would serve the inner segment, with one or two stations in common between the two trains that would allow customers to transfer between the trains if they wanted to, say, travel intra-island or use a different terminal from their original train's destination. As a for instance, on the Babylon branch, one train serving Penn Station will make stops from Babylon to Montauk. Then another train serving Grand Central would originate at Montauk and make stops to Rockville Center. If a Lindenhurst customer got on the Penn Station train and wanted to go to Grand Central, he or she could transfer at Montauk, get themselves situated in a new seat, and be ready for the rest of their ride, eliminating the need for a change at Jamaica. Of course, that same Lindenhurst customer could still change at Jamaica if they so chose, or they could wait for the next Grand Central service opportunity directly from their home station if that's their preference. The choice is there for them with these new schedules. This type of pattern will occur at multiple places around the railroad, allowing this type of convenient transfer opportunity and opening up many options for the trip that suits the customer best. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, thank you, George. Sorry about that. Okay, so now we're going to have Will do a demonstration of our trip planner. So, Will. Oh, and this is the link that you can use to find said trip planner.
Yep. There we are. Great. You can see the screen. So thank you, Nick. In early June, we released draft timetables, which were in PDF format, but I actually want to demo a tool that will allow you to see how all these changes affect you, in kind of a personalized view. So you can select an origin and destination, time of day that you travel, and you'll see exactly what kind of service we're going to be running. So why don't I pull that up so you can access this website that I'm presenting at. You can see it on there too, gcmtrips.mta.info. That's gcmtrips.mta.info. And I'm going to take you through a couple examples, one which George was actually just talking about, and kind of see what that looks like. So let's go ahead and we will we'll take as an example someone coming from Lindenhurst, going to Penn Station at 6 in the morning, and let's go ahead and find schedules. So there are a couple things to note here. About half this service goes to Grand Central, and so if you recall, if you look, the destination here is Penn Station. So half the service that we run from that area, as George was saying, goes to Grand Central. So those trains that go to Grand Central, you're going to have to transfer to make it to Penn Station. And of course, that about 50% is based on the surveys that we were talking about earlier. The fact that 50% of folks want to end up on the east side of Manhattan. But let's take an example of a train where you have to transfer. So, if this 621, we tell you to take it from Lindenhurst to Jamaica and transfer at Jamaica to the train that's going to Penn Station, which is where you want to end up. So that's a somewhat more traditional transfer point because most folks who take the Long Island Railroad are familiar with transferring at Jamaica. But in many cases, actually, you won't be transferring at Jamaica. You might be transferring at a smaller station, in this case, Montauk. So the nice thing about that is you don't have to deal with a large station, a lot of people moving around. You can just get off the train at Montauk. The train behind you is going to be the one that then takes you. So you get on your first train at Lindenhurst, get off at Montauk, wait for a train 3 minutes here, and then you get on that second train that takes you to Penn Station. Let me show you a second example. I will click out of these two, of someone who wants to reverse commute. They want to come from Grand Central, go to Ronkonkoma, same time. Now, again, with the first thing to note, again, here is currently this is basically not possible. There's a 90-minute gap in service in the morning because we don't have that third track, and it's certainly not possible to go from Grand Central. When Grand Central opens, you will be able to take a train from Grand Central during these morning hours all the way to Ronkonkoma, and we run about 2 trains an hour, right? So that already is a huge improvement. Now, there are going to be 2 options here. So half of those trains go directly from Grand Central to Ronkonkoma, and the other half, you're going to take a train from Grand Central to Jamaica and then change at Jamaica for your final train to Ronkonkoma. And the reason for that is that, again, half those trains originate in Penn Station, and since you're in Grand Central, you can't get on that train. So you need to get yourself to Jamaica. There you can transfer and get on your train to Ronkonkoma. But, of course, it's nice to see that there's a lot of service here. So huge benefit to those customers. This tool is available, again, at gcmtrips.mta.info. This is the place to go until right before Grand Central Madison opens. And at that point, what we're going to do is put this data into the train time app. So if you're familiar with, if you use the Long Island Railroad train time app, you'll just, same thing. You can just set a date in the app to after the opening of Grand Central Madison, and you'll see exactly the trains that will be running. That's not, for now, we're using this trip planning tool. And that's all.
Great, thank you, Will. Okay, so now that actually concludes the presentation. But now we're going to start Q&A, which I think most of you probably is what you really tuned in for. One of the biggest questions that we get is, when is Grand Central going to open? I've seen that question repeated so many times, so I'm going to pose it to both my right and to my left, to Rob and John. I don't know if you guys want to answer in concert.
Well, Rob, maybe you can weigh in on the construction schedule. I know you just spoke to it, but where are we on that? And that really dictates when we can open up.
So yeah, right now we're, like I said, major part of the civil work is done, and we're doing the systems testing. We have 29 separate systems which are involved in the Grand Central Madison service. This includes everything from signal systems and traction power systems on the right-of-way, the tunnel ventilation, emergency egress systems, fire life safety systems, and very mundane things like being able to turn the lights on and off. So we're in the middle of testing all of these systems, integrating these systems. Obviously, having the concourse ready for passengers, not only to operate through, but operate through safely, is our major concern. So we're looking at opening up before the end of the year.
That's great news. Yes. So the idea is open before the end of the year. That's the commitment we made in 2018 when we took a deep dive into this project, which had problems that were, I think everyone was aware of because it's a particularly difficult construction endeavor. But that commitment was made, and that commitment's being kept. Just before we jump into the next question, just because I see questions flying in here, and a lot's about time schedules and the like. But just to sort of go back to how we got to where we are today, not just a few years ago, some of the folks in this room had to have similar conversations with the public about how Penn Station had to reduce track capacity for a summer, and it took on the name Summer of Hell. That meant fewer trains were able to go into Penn Station. We had to explain to the public what that meant for their commutes when there's fewer trains, crowding, less choices. Today, we're talking about more choices. This is unbelievably exciting. And there are going to be some people, and I get emails, I get conversations from some people that they have to make a change at Jamaica, or their train is not leaving at 7:23, which is the train they took for the last 20 years, but it's leaving at 7:25. But we also get a lot of input from people who use the word, this is life-changing, that I never had a train available to take me where I needed to go, and now I will. So this is super exciting, and we're coming to you months in advance, and Will Fisher, who is a great colleague, also part of the team that put together so many great tools on the Long Island Railroad that I'm sure many of you use, tracking your train to see when it is. So when you're sitting in your car, you can run to the platform and get on your train. You could real-time crowding, which can tell you how many people are in your car or if they're particularly heavy or what kind of loading's going on, but you can sort of pick your spot, find a seat. So that tool that you created, it gives people an opportunity to find out what works for them, and that's going to answer a lot of the questions that people have today. But this is an exciting moment, and I don't want that to be lost on anybody, because the only reason we're able to be here today is not just because of building the tunnel that gets us into Grand Central that doubles capacity, which Rob Troop's responsible for, and that new terminal downstairs, but also the double track between Farmingdale and Ronkonkoma that you mentioned, Beth, that allows, it used to be there's only one track in much of that run, limited our choices. Third track allows us to run trains in two directions. Wow, what a novel concept that people might want to go in two directions in the largest city in North America. Yes, we want to do that. That's going to be available. So there's Harold Interlocking being untangled, Jamaica fixes at Jamaica. So this is very exciting, and just the ability to start fresh. So as questions come in, and I see them coming in, they're questions related to an old schedule. That schedule is not going to be around later. This is brand new, ripped down, rebuilding a better, rational schedule. So now, Nick, we can jump to our next question with that little background.
Maybe we can conclude the meeting after that. I'm only kidding. So one thing I think it's one of the most popular topics right now, and it's coming up a lot, and a lot of people are submitting comments right now about it in the Q&A. Let's talk about Port Washington service. So, the main thing is, my understanding is that we expanded AM service, AM peak service, PM peak service, and off-peak service. However, George, can you talk to me about the express service and how that plays in with the geocoding and everything else?
Yes, indeed. Turn my mic on. Yes, indeed, Nick. It is true. We are increasing service throughout that branch. In the AM peak, it goes from 11 trains to 17, which is a 54% increase. And the PM, it goes from 15 to 20. So there are increases on the branch. The biggest issue on the Port Washington branch is really infrastructure. The branch ends in an approximately 5-mile portion of single track east of Great Neck going to Port Wash, and we have limited yard storage space at the end of track in Port Washington. So this single track zone limits the amount of service that can be operated, as only one train in one direction can operate at any given time. But again, there is an increase in service. So those trains now are split between two terminals. So the Penn Station customer, he or she may not have as many direct options as they had in the past, but they have more overall opportunities with the potential to transfer to the other terminal at either Great Neck or Woodside, or in some cases Bayside. But in order to avoid diluting the service to one terminal or the other and allow these transfers to occur, the stopping patterns were revised compared to our current schedules. And yes, in some cases, trains do have 2 or 3 additional stops and may take a few more minutes as a result, but doing so allows all customers along the branch to have more robust service opportunities.
Great. Thank you, George. I appreciate it. And John?
Yeah, can I just want to jump in to add to what George said. Our inability to build that extra track in Port Washington cannot, that's a major impact on our ability to add even greater capacity. I just went through a list of things we could do: third track, double track, pocket tracks throughout the system. If we hadn't done those, we would probably be facing the same situation on our other lines. Is that the case, George?
That is definitely true.
So look, this is something we tried to do. I think, George, you probably were in those meetings.
Yes, sir.
And sometimes politics gets in the way of progress. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. But the bottom line is we're doing the best we can with the capacity we have, and that capacity includes doubling the tunnels in the East River. So that, if you're on the Port Washington line, this is a growth in service. There's more opportunities in both directions, and we're going to make use of that.
Okay, great. Similar to that, George, can you talk to me about the Brooklyn service? So I understand we're getting an increase, but now it's more of a shuttle. So what does that mean for our customers?
Yes, we are. And some of the things that we've talked about so far, that video expressed it really well. If people didn't get a chance to see that in the presentation, if they can go back and look at it, that was very well done. But yeah, so as we mentioned, overall Brooklyn service has increased by 28%. It's a combination of new shuttle service and some limited through service remains. The Brooklyn shuttle service concept is related to several things. You know, first, as we've mentioned, there are conflicts in the infrastructure with trains to and from Brooklyn that operate through the middle of Jamaica Station. They come face to face with trains to and from Penn Station, requiring crossover moves. That eats up capacity and decreases the amount of service we can operate. So in other words, every time a Brooklyn train crosses the plant, the switches and signals are locked out for a period of time before a Penn Station train can operate. So
Yeah, no, Joy, I was just going to jump in, and Beth, maybe you can weigh in because you have to deal with this on the transportation side. The waits at Jamaica, we're like when you're sitting in the train at Jamaica and you're being told you're held for a train that's headed to Huntington, you don't know where it is. Is this how much is this helping you in your role, not having to have those scheduled waits at Jamaica?
That's the main purpose of this, to increase the throughput, to not have customers wait, to just keep moving people. So it's what we're looking forward to.
And it'll make dramatic differences in our reliability. And further on Brooklyn, you know, the fact is Brooklyn is used by about 7% of our overall ridership, and the overwhelming majority of those using Brooklyn have a destination of somewhere other than Brooklyn, mostly Lower Manhattan. So many of those folks are probably going to opt for our Grand Central Madison service and accessing the subway there. Only 2% of riders using our Brooklyn service have Brooklyn as their final destination. So most of the folks using that service already do change trains and/or modes of transportation for their trip. And it may take a few more minutes to transfer in the new service plan going over to the new Platform F and tracks 11 and 12, but the overall increase in service makes for a better customer experience. I mean, during the off-peak, service has increased by 50%. We're up from 2 trains per hour up to 3, one of those being direct hourly service to and from the West Hempstead branch, which for the first time ever now has hourly service off-peak.
Okay, great. I appreciate that, George. Thank you very much. Let's talk about the terminal a little bit because we've gotten a couple of questions about that as well. So I think the main thing is, you know, accessibility and retail. So why don't we talk about the retail first? Jen, do you want to give a deeper dive on that?
Sure. So retail will not be available when we first open. We are looking at adding some kiosks, some retail opportunities in 2023, and then we're looking at full rollout of retail in 2024. And I get it. I'm an avid coffee drinker, so people are going to be wondering where they're going to get their coffee in the morning. And you know, there's going to be opportunity to go to Grand Central Main Concourse before descending down to the Long Island Railroad Madison Concourse, where you will be able to get your coffee, get a donut, get some breakfast. You know, whatever it is that you need before coming down to our area.
Okay, great. John?
Is there truth to the rumors that could possibly be a bar in the new concourse for our thirsty customers?
I don't speak to rumors, John, but there very well could be.
Okay, very exciting.
Okay. What about city ticket? Beth, is this city ticket eligible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So, and what fare zone is it?
It's the same zone and same fare structure as Penn Station, Fare Zone 1.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And to be clear, the city ticket is available. It previously was available just on weekends on intra-city travel. Recently expanded to all off-peak intra-city travel on both Long Island Railroad and Metro North. So it's just to clarify those limitations.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Thank you, guys. So can we talk about why a lot of expresses have become local trains? And I'm looking at George, and George, can you weigh in?
Sure, Nick, we can talk about that. One key point that has been made before, but I'll reiterate it, is this is a complete schedule rewrite and a rethink. So it's sort of apples to oranges to compare the service plan to the current service plan as well as the current stopping patterns. With changing demand and different ridership patterns that are occurring and now serving 2 Manhattan terminals, the stopping patterns necessarily had to change in order to provide ample service opportunities at each of our stations. But generally speaking, these changes are typically just a matter of minutes and a handful of additional station stops. In addition, this will end up providing people with more transfer options as all trains will now stop at Jamaica. And of course, as the new schedules go into effect and we begin to see new trends and patterns emerge, we'll be reviewing and revising service to the degree possible. Thanks.
Okay, great. I appreciate it, George. Thank you. And actually, while I have you, so how long will trains be in terms of like the run time? So there's also maybe a question for Beth. I don't know which one of you wants to take it. Running in, what's the run time from, say, Jamaica to Penn and then Jamaica to Grand Central? How does that compare?
Roughly the same. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Within a matter of minutes, and it depends what local stops it makes west of there will determine the exact figure, but it's roughly the same.
Okay, cool. John, did you want to add something?
I just want to jump in on that last question that was coming in about locals versus express. And I think it's more important to think about, all of our trains were making stops somewhere, and there's some additions of stops, but there are stations that were historically underserved. And maybe that's an opinion, but if you look at stations, we have stations that are going to see an explosion in service, and it's driven by demand. And by rationalizing this service and by adding stops where appropriate, we're giving these folks who want to use the Long Island Road an opportunity to use the Long Island Road, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely, John.
Okay, great. Thank you guys for that. So another question that I saw, which is usually a big one, is why are there no additional trains on the Montauk branch? So, George, once again.
All right, very good, Nick. Well, the bottom line on our diesel branches, the Montauk, the Port Jeff, east of Ronkonkoma, the Oyster Bay, our diesel fleet size remains unchanged, so our service levels in diesel territory remain largely the same. What we've done, though, in many cases, is improve the service intervals on the branch. In other words, the spacing between trains for more regular service patterns during the peak periods. With our current schedules, they've been established for many, many years, and changes and additions were fit in where they could fit without disrupting the existing service. So you'd end up finding some trains clumped together and then large gaps before and after those clumps of trains. This rewriting of our schedule to accommodate Grand Central Madison allowed us to fix some of those situations. And I say this as someone who does commute from the diesel branches, so I definitely have paid close attention.
Okay, George, thank you. So can we just return to the express train on the Port Washington branch? People keep asking us about it, so I think it deserves more time. So maybe John, if you want to weigh in too, what we're doing to try to see what can be worked out, et cetera. What are the tangible benefits for people on the Port Washington branch east of Great Neck, all that stuff. So I don't know which one of you wants to start, but.
George, go ahead.
Well, I think we've kind of established why things landed the way they are, and we will, of course, continue to monitor as the schedule goes into effect of, were the added stops effective? Did they achieve what they were supposed to? The additional opportunities being provided to customers with the offset of maybe a couple of minutes of additional service, of additional runtime because of the added stops, we feel is going to be a greater benefit to a greater number of people without diluting the service at any particular station. But it will, of course, be looked at as we roll along, and as people try out Grand Central, then some of them may stick with it, some may go back to Penn. I think we're going to see a lot of evolution in this schedule as it rolls along in the first 6 months to a year.
Okay, great. Thank you, George. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, and the bottom line again is more trains are running on this branch, and they're running to more places. And We are seeing questions come in all the time about access from places like Manhasset to jobs in the East Midtown area, where you have a huge amount of construction of new Class A office space. So, yeah, those people are getting a great benefit. More trains for the first time ever to Grand Central to those jobs. And that, so Port Washington branch, this is good news. Now, could there have been better news? Absolutely. But ultimately, there are political decisions made that are out of our hands. Those decisions were made. I think they're regrettable, frankly. I think everybody thinks they're regrettable. And I think responsible elected officials would like to see that changed. And hopefully down the road, maybe something can be done. We'll certainly look to work with anyone who can help make the railroad better, just like we did to advance the double track and the third track and this very project that we're talking about today. So, look, we're going to try to get the most service we can out of this, and the best service we can. But there are limitations, and we have to live within the constraints of those limitations, and that's what we're doing. And I think, George, you and your team put together the best schedule you can, considering the circumstances.
Thank you for that, John.
Yeah, thank you, both of you. So, Jen, remind me, I may have already asked you this and you may have responded, but did you go over the accessibility features of the new terminal? Because I got a couple questions about it. I just want to make sure that they were answered.
Well, we do have elevators that will take customers down to the mezzanine, elevators that will take customers from the mezzanine to the platforms, as well as elevators that will take customers from within our concourse to the street, and also into Metro North areas, Metro North cross passageways, 47th Street exit. So we do have a lot of opportunities there.
Okay, great. And this may be also for you and Rob Troop, so I will pose it to both of you. Do you know how long it will take someone getting from the train to the street level? And I imagine it'll depend on the where you are on the train, what exit you're taking, but I don't know if you guys want to weigh in.
Well, I think as people become more familiar with the campus and they become more comfortable with the route that they want to travel throughout the campus, they'll know where to align themselves on the train coming in. They'll learn their final destination point, what egress they want to use to exit, and which is the best vertical mode of transportation for them, whether it's an elevator or an escalator.
Great, thank you. Rob, did you have anything to add?
No, other than if you amble like me, it's going to take you a little bit longer than someone like Nick, who would go a little bit, who would probably run a little bit quicker. But yeah,
you never know. I might be checking out that bar. Who knows? So, John, did you have something to add?
No, I just want, I'm tracking some of the questions coming in here and some of the points that are being made, and sometimes they're not questions, so we don't have to address them, but I'd like to bring them up just so people know. Oftentimes it's the benefits. Reverse commute. Not something that was possible before. Now we're seeing a lot of opportunities there. Where does the reverse commute come into? Is it always going to a job? No, it's like people from Long Island who want to go to a Knick game or a Ranger game or go to a Broadway show or go out with friends, and they don't want to leave 3 hours early because that's their only option. That's really good news. Another thing that we see are our friends in Westchester and Connecticut and the Bronx who use the Metro North service and want to get to places like JFK. That is the airport people use from there. So that's off the roads. They're onto the railroads. They're making the connection at Grand Central, out to Jamaica, out to the air train. Works very well. Similarly, if you're going to some of the schools in the Bronx, Westchester, elsewhere, you're going to be able to go on our ticket app, Will Fisher, and you will look for tickets to those locations, and maybe down the road we'll be able to come up with some merge ticket. That's not yet, but the idea is this is very much a regional view. Is that the way you see this, Will?
I don't want to spoil anything.
No, please don't.
I want to give the head of both railroads the opportunity to discuss these things. But yes, I think that the what's coming is the obviously these railroads and the region with the infrastructure is being merged, and we want to reflect that with the digital tools that you have, right? So, for example, now we have one ticketing app, we have one app for Metro North to get customer data, train info. We have one app for Long Island Railroad to get train info. People complain about this a lot, and rightfully so. So soon we're going to have these railroads coming together with with Grand Central, and then with Penn Station Access in a few years. So I'll keep it vague, but we're excited about what's to come.
Yeah, but this is connectivity between all of our services. We see it at the railroads. We see it with our bus and subway. Our schedules make sense so that people can marry those services together and get where they want to go. And that's what we're getting at, understanding the schedules. We're not there yet where our schedules are related to Metro North schedules or the subway, certainly, but the opportunities, are certainly there. And Jen, I'd go over to you. How is that connection made at Grand Central, since you're sort of living it right now? You're going to manage that space, and I'm sure you become besties with all the Metro North folks upstairs.
Well, and I apologize, George, but this does give Long Islanders an opportunity to go to a Yankees game. But to that point, with the connectivity with Metro North, it's very simple. It's very simple to just go right up into Metro North territory through one of the passageways or exit points, and you can transfer to Metro North territory. You can transfer to the subway, and to your point, it also connects the folks that are in the Metro North region to JFK Airport.
And on behalf of George, I'd like to say that it also connects people from Westchester to Met games via Metro North out to Mets Willets Long Island Railroad Station.
Indeed.
So.
Okay, so that was great. Thank you, guys. I'm just going through the questions here right now. So can we just, I guess, briefly discuss? I mean, maybe a little more, George. Like, how, besides the geocoding and all that, were there some other things that we used to rewrite the schedule, other data and whatnot?
Well, of course, our normal ridership studies that we use, the geocoding, we do a customer survey every year that asks a lot of questions. We were working with folks at headquarters for different forms of data. And on top of that, of course, all of the additional infrastructure, these great projects that we've been talking about that allowed us to do new things and open up new markets, even things that may just present themselves as it happens, such as John was talking about, a lot of these folks doing a reverse commute, which has never been possible before. The surveys and the geocoding may tell us that X number of people may want to do this, but even more may find it so convenient that new markets open up that will just continue to evolve over time. So it is a very exciting time. There's a lot going on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I would just add to that, look no farther than Jamaica Station itself. It is surrounded by growth, buildings going up day after day. You see them shooting up. Well, it's not a surprise that when you look at our schedule during some of the morning peak hours, there are scheduled service that is that is greater than you see on some of our subway lines. The regularity of service, I think there's 30 trains during one of the hours that go into the city. So it's where you see growth and where you're going to see people, you're going to see trains.
Right, and another thing to that end, a lot of the event spaces, the different arenas around here. We have a brand new station at Elmont. We're increasing service to Brooklyn, so folks going to Barclays will see more. We still have robust service to Penn Station for Madison Square Garden. So there's a lot of opportunity for growth.
And George, I think there's also, if you look at some of the large Long Island Railroad decked parking lots that have been built in recent years, which has been very good in freeing up spaces for other use, which is sort of smart use. You see it in Westbury now. Mm-hmm. There's one in Wanta, and maybe it's not Wanta, Mineola, and out in Ronkonkoma. And
there's a new one in Wyandanch.
Wyandanch, sorry, not Wanta. So you're going to see robust service there. Those are opportunities. If you're driving to a station, you pick the right station to drive to, you're going to get parking, and you're going to get on a train and get into town.
Right. And with that parking, the transit-oriented development that's occurring, this is just a very exciting time for all of our agencies.
Great, thank you, guys. We talked a little bit about reverse commuting. What I guess I'm, if I'm phrasing this wrong, let me know. But which branches are going to see the the greatest increase in service for reverse commuting?
Well, you're going to see a lot of it system-wide, but particularly the mainline branches, which had none for a good, 90 minutes to 2 hours during the AM and PM peak periods, now have these opportunities. And the mainline corridor serves so many employment centers on Long Island, such as Mineola, Hicksville, et cetera. So they will be great beneficiaries. Likewise, stations in Queens, a lot of our city terminal stations are seeing great increases in service, both in the peak direction and the reverse peak direction. So just again, a lot of opportunity for folks to be able to access Long Island without their car.
And George, I'd add even, intra-island, we speak to folks at NYU, Langone, Winthrop, in Mineola, more and more people using that facility, older folks who certainly don't want to drive to or from a procedure or some sort of service. They're using our trains. They didn't have that option before. Students who are going out to the new medical school there, people going to Chaminade from the city who had to wake up at 4 in the morning or something to start their day. So this is, as I mentioned earlier, very much life-changing for a lot of people. There are people who have different jobs out on the islands who now can get out there, and it's the reverse for people coming in the evening. So it's just an outstanding opportunity that it was really almost a shame of the railroad that we could not provide service in two directions. It's just incredible that was allowed to go on for so long and accepted as just a way of life. So this is the big fix on that, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a great change. And the intra-island stuff that you mentioned, same. There's so many new opportunities for folks to do that who maybe work in Mineola but live just a few stations away. With more service opportunities, they will have more opportunity to use the railroad and not have to drive.
Yeah, I mean, actually, to add to that, I have a bunch of friends who work at Winthrop, and they drive exclusively because it's just not feasible to take the train there right now. And it's at Mineola. It's adjacent to the station. So this hopefully will change that behavior, and they, just don't have to worry about having a car in the city, paying for parking, and dealing with that whole, going back and forth. And I mean, it doesn't matter when you're on the LIE, there's going to be traffic. So it's a good thing to avoid. Yeah, so I'm going through the questions here. And yeah, I mean, John, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on? I'm not sure. Because I think we're almost at time.
I don't have anything specific, but I'm glad to answer any questions you might have, Nick. Anything coming in on the from our friends out in the world?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I mean, I think if we could just go back to. Actually, I have one last question for George. So, can you talk to me a little bit about Queens service along the main line? Either reverse peak or off peak or whatever. I mean, just because there's been a couple questions that have been coming in about service at Forest Hills, Kew Gardens, Woodside, et cetera.
Right. As I mentioned earlier, most of our Queens stations are seeing a big increase in service in both the reverse peak and the off-peak directions. Kew Gardens and Forest Hills, particularly west of Jamaica, because they're now serving two terminals, their service is more or less doubled, because now where we provided X number of opportunities to Penn, we're now providing that many to Grand Central as well. So big beneficiaries in service increases there, and more opportunities to transfer around the railroad to and from those stations.
Okay, great. And John?
Yeah, since we're running out of time, I just want to close out on an issue that we haven't really dealt with yet, which is the number of delays that this railroad and other railroad deals with that are just the structural sort of environment that they live with it. Every year, if you look at what's the leading cause of delays of 10 or more trains or 20 or more trains, it's usually something like the grade crossing was broken, there was a signal issue, track was broken, there was a car got on tracks. all these various things. Which should not be lost on folks here is that the amount of investment in the overall Long Island Railroad infrastructure that goes along with this project is really wiping away these leading causes of delays. We replaced 7 grade crossings where cars had to drive over tracks that often leads to not great results. Those are no longer there. No delays related to that. We had bridges that were regularly getting struck because of trucks that were too high. Those delays no longer there because those bridges are replaced. The arms that come with the grade crossings, I'm sure, Beth, you get those all the time, which is an arm is broken because there's a signal malfunction. Well, guess what? Your train is delayed. So those delays are going away, and they're going away as each one of these smaller projects gets done, but it is all related and allows George and Beth to put together this new schedule that will serve the public much better than what we had to sort of deal with in the past. So I just want to impress upon people that these investments are paying off already, and then come December, we will have, sort of the full menu to pick from.
Okay, and thank you, John. And I have one last question, and it's from the chat, and it's for Rob. So what happens at the Grand Central Madison terminal in a blackout, or if the power goes out, or some, So you heard what I said. So, tell us.
So we have 21 separate substations which provide facility power throughout the entire alignment, and all these substations are interconnected with tie break, where one can feed the other should the one substation go down. In addition, the substations themselves, the main power feeds, they have 6 to 10 separate Con Edison feeders which come into the facilities. In addition to all this primary, secondary, and tertiary backup that we have, we also have a generator which can run the fully functional life safety systems, which would be required for, lighting, fire life safety, tunnel ventilation, these types of elements, that would provide for the safe evacuation of passengers should there be a significant blackout. And again, we've tied all these together. We can also recognize when this is happening. If, because of the fully integrated system, as it's tied to the control center, they can start seeing if they're losing Con Edison feeders, and they can react appropriately to that, not only for the evacuation of passengers, but also how they run the trains.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rob. And John?
I just want to give Nick, a plug for doing a great job, but 3 demerits for ending it on a blackout question. That is, wow, it's a little depressing, but hopefully you didn't jinx us.
I'm sorry. I just saw the question asked like 3 or 4 different times, so I figured it was something we could get to really quickly.
That's a good host.
Okay, so yeah, as I said, we're going to conclude the meeting now. Thank you very much to everyone who attended tonight. Just again, a reminder, next Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m., we're going to be holding that public engagement session. So I see, we had a lot of questions that came in. So please, if you have feedback that you want to give us, please sign up and register for that. It's a requirement for that session. And yeah, thanks again. And John, I think.
And Nick, I just want, in addition to that, we're gonna be out there, or Nick will be out there, and others in the communities at stations, speaking with your elected officials, speaking with commuters, and making sure that you're checking the schedule out with Will Fisher's tool, and being heard. So there's more to come, but this is a really starting well in advance. It's about being transparent about the schedule as soon as we could, and hopefully that's going to work out, and you'll have plenty of time to plan and ask questions. Nick?
That's it. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Take care.